Okay, this is the lecture for Thursday, December 10th for Ancient Medieval History. You all have your notes open and out and are going to follow along. The last time we were here, we did the Peloponnesian War and also the century of ongoing civil war that followed Athens' defeat and Sparta's victory in the Peloponnesian War. And we talked about how Philip, king of Macedon, a barbaric semi-Greek kingdom north of Greece, conquered and unified Greece because the Greeks were so embittered against one another that they would rather be ruled by a goat-loving savage from Macedon than some bleephead from Thebes. And this essential division among the Greeks is a nasty, bad thing, but it does serve Philip's interests. Philip also does double the size of the spears and increases the size of the phalanx, which is the Greek formation. Would anyone like to go through these and hand out? Thank you. Just anyone who's here, anything that belongs to somebody who's not here, just leave it there. Folder. Okay. And Philip had an idea once he conquered Greece. When you get a group of people together, it's not just enough that you have to hold them together with negative things like, do what I want or I'll punish you. You also need to give them a common project to work on. And Philip's common project is based on what he learned. Do you have your hand up, Emma?
No.
Okay. Okay. And it's hidden anyway. Yeah. It's all secretive and stuff. It's based on the experience of Xenophon and the 10,000 mercenaries in his story, the Anabasis. The Persian king invited Greek mercenaries to Ctesiphon, the heart of their empire, but then he died, and everyone blamed the Greeks because it's easier to blame foreigners than each other. And as much as they tried, the Persians failed and failed and failed to stop the 10,000 from marching from the heart of Persia out back to Greece. This indicates that the Persian Empire is weak and that a combined Macedonian-Greek army would have a fighting chance of actually knocking down the rotten edifice and defeating it. And just as Philip is ready to go, he was assassinated. And
back issues, yeah.
No, see, dagger, back, assassinated, blood, dead. You'll see something like this when we do Julius Caesar, although there'll be more of them. In any event, Philip's dead because the assassins assumed they could rule Macedon through the pliable teenage son of King Philip. And the pliable teenage son of King Philip, Alex, he's 17 years old, he's a kid, did not know who they were messing with because Alexander had already commanded thousands of men in battle. Alexander had already met his fear and overcome it. And Alexander had some amazing talents, unique in human history, and he also had one of the strongest wills that you're going to find. Thank you. Within a few months, Alexander had killed all of the assassins. No one kills his daddy and gets away with it. Alexander says, okay, now that that's done, on to Persia. So he invades Persia with a unified Greek army. And to understand Alexander, you need to get a sense of what it is that makes him special. He has two qualities that the only other person I know of in history that has these precise qualities is Napoleon, the Emperor of the French around the year 1800. First of all, Alexander has an intuitive understanding of ground. When you're a soldier commanding an army, where you're going to fight the battle really matters. Is it all flat, open grassland? Or is there a stream? Is there a soft area of swamp? Are there trees? Are there little ridges? Are there hills? What shape are the hills? Is the forest too dense to pass through with formations? Or is it passable? What are the choke points? What are those points that are going to give you control of the battlefield? If you've played chess and you understand how chess works, it's called in chess controlling the middle of the board. How can you, with your pieces, gain control over that central battle space between your side and the enemy's? Alexander understood intuitively how the ground worked. It's as if he would go to a hilltop and he would just see how armies could ebb and flow across this ground. And by understanding the ground like that, he could prepare ambushes, he could prepare tricks, deceptions, and he could command the choke points as necessary to win. That is a necessary skill for a general, and he has it. But he also has this. He has an intuitive understanding of the psychology of the people around him. This is expressed in two ways. First of all, his own men, his leaders. He understands how to get them to risk their lives for him. He understands how to get them to die for him, to die for his dream. He can motivate an army with a speech. He can motivate his generals. Some generals are greedy. He'll give them monetary rewards. Some generals want glory. He'll give them a chance to shine in battle. Some generals are simply loyal to him and they want to express that. He'll put them in the ultimate positions of trust. Some generals are having a bad day. He'll encourage them. Some generals are a little too full of themselves. He'll poke holes in them until they deflate a little bit. He can read the people around him and understand the pressure points psychologically, how to apply pressure in a positive way or in a negative way to get the best out of them. And his men would die for him and did die for him. They would go to hell and back for him. And you will see exactly how literally true that statement is for Alexander. But that understanding of psychology isn't simply for his own guys. By looking from a hilltop at how the enemy commander deploys his troops, he can read the psychological assumptions, prejudices, weaknesses of the general opposing him. He gets a personality profile just by looking at how the other guy he moves his forces. Now, I had a friend who took fencing coaching from an Olympic fencer from Romania. And that Olympic fencer said that you can always tell what a fencer is going to do based on how they place their weight and how they move their feet. If you're aware of what your opponent, this is true in all fighting, by the way. If you understand what your opponent is doing with his weight and his feet, you can predict what they can do. Now, if they're really good, they can trick you. But most people can't. Most people telegraph what they're about to do with their feet. So Alexander can do this, but it's not on an individual level watching the feet of his physical opponent. It's doing it for an entire army. The enemy's deployments reveal the enemy general's mind. Strengths, weaknesses, what's exploitable. And Alexander will exploit it mercilessly. This is going to make him a really successful general. Remarkably and amazingly and unusually successful. And again, the only one in the Western world that has a record like his is Napoleon Bonaparte. They both have those skills, the same ones. So Alexander breaks into the Persian Empire, and there are a few border skirmishes, and the Persians are crushed. Not by numbers, they always outnumber Alexander. But Alexander has, at the forefront of his troops, an elite cavalry force called the Companions. Now, Alexander's companions had the weakness of all cavalry in the ancient world. They didn't have stirrups. Think about riding a horse into battle without stirrups. You can barely hold on with your thighs and your calves. And if you start swinging weapons, it's going to more likely knock you off the horse as it will damage the enemy. But Alexander and his men are committed. Alexander personally leads the companions. He's not just a general that sends people into battle. He plans things out and then he leads people into battle. And this is one of the reasons why his men love him. Now, the companions are lovers. They are pair bonded. You have an older guy and a younger guy. And Alexander encourages homosexual relations between these companions. It's Greece. It's not, although today is today. He encourages it because the women are nowhere around, first of all. But also, he believes that the men will fight harder for their spouses than they will if they're just buddies. So the companions are pair bonded. You got an old salt soldier who may not be at his physical prime anymore, but he knows the job, and he's teaching the young guy and helping him come up, and that's the bond that holds the companions together. It's unusual by modern standards, but that's how he does it. As he moves into Persia, the Persians prepare to meet him near where Asia Minor meets Asia at the Battle of Issus. At the Battle of Issus, Alexander crushes the Persians. But around there, either just before or just after he arrives at Issus, and given the way I wrote my notes, I think it's just before he goes to Issus, Alexander is not just conquering Persia, he wants to see it. He's a tourist as well as a general. He's a conqueror, and he's a guy who's just thrilled to see the sights. And one of the sights in the high mountains that overlook the Black Sea, right here, is the village. It would be nice if people actually looked up when I'm pointing the map. Makes me feel important. Ooh, I feel so better now. The city of Gordium. And Gordium is a tourist town because it's got an amazing knot. This is a cable of ropes that is believed to have been placed there by the gods themselves as an unsolvable problem to keep human pride humble. This unsolvable problem is the Gordian knot. For about 100 years, people have come to Gordium. And at Gordium, they look at the knot. They look at it from all sides. They sketch the knot. And they try to feel and think and intuit and reason their way into how are they going to unravel this knot. So Alexander's gone there to see the Gordian knot. And as his army waits at the base of the hill, he goes to this hilltop town with his officers and his 300 and his companions. And, of course, the people of Gordium are, yay! Because Alexander's coming, and Alexander has an army. And if Alexander doesn't feel like he's getting a warm welcome, he'll flatten and empty the town of living people, turning all the living people into dead people. Yay! Thank you for coming, Alexander. Thank you for freeing us from the Persians. You want to see the knot? Everyone wants to see the knot. Let's go see the knot. So, Alexander goes to see the knot. He gets down off his horse. Say the knot is here. And like a good army officer, and I knew some guys who were, I've seen them all do this, they sort of look around, looking at it from a variety of sides. That's quite a problem. Slice! He takes his sword out and cuts the knot, cleaving it asunder, cutting it in half. The knot falls into two pieces. Mischief managed, problem solved. Let's go, boys! He gets on his horse and rides away. And the people of Gordium are going, yay! Alexander, he solved the knot. He did. We're never going to have people visit our town again because there's nothing here but the knot. We're all broke. Yay! What does this tell you about Alexander?
He likes solving problems.
Yes, but he's not a conventional problem solver. Look, this is a life lesson. Oh, yes, go ahead.
When he solved the knot, it was impatient and brash. He didn't actually try to solve it. He merely put on a show in order to seem like he was being methodical about it, only he to choose the shorter path in the end.
Yes, and as a thoughtful, intellectual person, a person might criticize Alexander for that. But it makes an impression, and that's his point. As a leader, he has to make an impression. And the impression is this, and there is a life lesson in this. Sometimes in life, you are wrapped up by red tape and BS. Blue sky, Barbara Streisand. You know what I'm talking about. And if you follow the rules of the BS, you will not escape. You will be prey to the bureaucracy. You will be prey to whatever silly pettifogging rules, meddlesome interference is being done to you. You will be trapped like a fly trapped in a spider web. That's the way rules, regulations, and other people's thoughts are. In other words, there are people, other people's dreams, and they're trying to get you to believe in them. And if you do, you're trapped. Sometimes in life, you've got to just cut through the BS. Sometimes in life, you've got to say, no, I deny your whole presupposition. And cut through it and get on with your life. That is a life lesson. Take it or leave it. I have found it useful in my own life to recognize, no, I'm not going to get trapped in your assumptions. You're wrong. This is what I think, right or wrong. Cut through it and gone. It's like people who try to debate me on the issue of man-made climate change. I understand that there are various measures by which such thing is happening. I understand why people would believe in them. But I deny the underlying assumptions of their data because their data is based on global weather measurement that has only been really taken since 1945 or earlier in World War II. We do not have comprehensive global weather data from before 1939 when World War II begins. We simply don't. And to base any conclusions on a planetary climate on the basis of less than a century of data is folly. Logically, to me, it makes not a bit of sense. If we had comprehensive weather data going back 500 years, 1,000 years, then you could argue. But we don't. So I do not want to take less than 100 years, about 80 years, out of context and make policy based on that. I deny the assumption. Now, I may be a stupid, wrong old man. In fact, I am about many things, but I like it. And there'll come a time when you reach a point in your life where you don't mind people thinking of you as a stupid, crazy, old, whatever you are, because you got to be true to yourself. And you got to be true to your ideas and your conscience. And if you won't be true to yourself, who the hell will? So Alexander cuts through the Gordian knot. He denies the assumption and he destroys the Gordian, the tourist industry of Gordium. And yes, he does so by being intellectually impatient and lazy. That's true. After the Battle of Issus, the king Darius, basically the last, takes his army and marshals it in northwestern Mesopotamia, northwest of his capital of Ctesiphon. At Gaugamela, the culminating battle of the war between Alexander and Darius is going to be fought. This battle is massive. The Persians outnumber the Greeks significantly. The Persians have a force of charioteers. Nobody uses chariots anymore. This is the last great battle of the chariots in human history, at least in the West. And the ground has actually been prepared for the chariots to go across because they're wheeled vehicles. You need relatively smooth, unobstructed ground. So Darius has prepared the battlefield. He has his chariots. He has massive cavalry. He has foot soldiers. And he is taking the Macedonian army very, very seriously. Alexander has a small force, but it's disciplined, it's dedicated, and it's led by him. Alexander misdirects the Persians, directing their attention over here when he's actually going to make his real attack over here. The chariots come in, but not straight ahead like most people would expect. They come across the battle in echelon at an angle. And they have some shock effect, but the Macedonians know how to deal with chariots. You move aside and you stab the charioteer or the horse as it's going by. And if you can get out of the way quickly enough, you'll be fine. Because its inertia is going to keep it going in one direction. This battle results in Alexander personally driving so far ahead of his army that he's practically surrounded and cut off by the Persians. He gets within spear shot of King Darius and throws. King Darius turns his chariot around and flees. There's a great, what do you call that? Tiles, mosaic. There's a great mosaic showing this moment of Alexander getting close with a spear and Darius on a chariot with his funny hat, sort of looking back in fear and riding away. Alexander triumphs at Gaugamela and Darius flees. Alexander lets it be known what peace will require. Darius doesn't need to die. Darius has a beautiful, marriageable daughter named Roxanne. Alexander will marry her. Darius will abdicate, and Alexander will not only be king of Macedon and warlord of Greece, he will be the great king of Persia by conquest and by marriage. This is an amazingly smart approach because what it does is it turns Alexander and his army from foreign conquerors into a legitimate Persian emperor. He then travels throughout the empire as Lord of West and East. Alexander goes to Afghanistan briefly, which is the only major Western leader to do that until the modern era, until I think President Bush goes there during the war. Alexander is unique in human history in this respect. He is simultaneously king of Macedon, the most powerful European country, the most powerful country in the West. Macedon, which dominates East and has just conquered Persia. In a dozen years, 12 to 14 years, the man conquers an empire that is so large it takes months to cross, just with a courier on the king's robes. He is also, at the same time as the lord of the most powerful European country, the lord of the most powerful Asian country. At this moment, Persia is more powerful than any of the Indian kingdoms, than China or Japan. Persia is it. Alexander is the only human being in history to be the lord of the most powerful Western and Eastern, Occidental and Oriental, European and Asiatic nation, all at once. That's an amazing achievement. Conquering Persia in 12 to 14 years is an amazing achievement. So now he's in his early 30s. He spent some time in Ctesiphon. He's enjoyed things. He's encouraged his men to marry Persian noblewomen, as well as have their Greek wives back home. Why? Because the Greek wives are nowhere near. They're thousands of miles away. But by taking a Persian wife, Alexander is going to have mixed-race children. By the Greek generals and soldiers marrying the local Persian aristocracy, the rulers of Alexander's kingdoms in the future will be the best of Greek and Persia, blended together as mixed-race children. Alexander is the Johnny Appleseed of cities. When in elementary school, I hope you learned the story of Johnny Appleseed, which was this sort of unusual American fellow in the early Republic who walked around with a pot for a hat, and his big thing was he carried a big bag of apple seeds wherever he went. And he traveled widely and planted apple trees throughout what would become the United States of America. Sort of a, yes?
This is kind of random fact about him, but apparently his feet were so tough, he couldn't feel anything when he used to entertain the town children. He used to stick needles in them and stuff.
I don't think I've heard that since I was a kid. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, look, he walked all over the place. He didn't take horse. He walked everywhere. His calluses were like armor plate, I guess. That's incredible. Thank you. No, I have a vague memory of the needle thing. That's cool.
He used to also give gifts to ribbons to girls and stuff and yeah, I don't know. I watched a video about him.
Oh, he's an interesting guy. I think he was probably a little touched. I don't think he was quite normal in the head, but he did wonderful things with his life. What an interesting fellow. You don't need to be perfect in order to have an interesting life. You just need to be brave. You need to find something worth doing and then do it. Hopefully not mass murder. Hopefully something like planting apple seeds. Hopefully your art is something that makes the world a better place and not horrible. Trust me, some of the great evil people in history thought that they were artists. and that they were sculpting human society like a topiary. Yeah, we'll just cut off this group of people. We'll just cut off that group of people. Things will be better. Scary stuff. Anyway, Alexander's not like that. He is the Johnny Appleseed of cities. Wherever his armies go, he establishes a new Greek city. And there's a consistent pattern to them. These new Greek cities. There's Alexandretta, which is up here. And there's Alexandria down here in Egypt. In fact, there are about 24 cities of Alexander. Alexandropolis, Alexandrinople. Alexander has city after city. And when it comes time for them to name it, his generals look up and I've got to name it after the most worthy person I can think of. I guess it's going to be Alexander. I guess it's going to be me. Alexander did not have a false humility about him. However, he was loyal. His favorite horse was called Bucephalus. And in honor of Bucephalus, one of the cities that his army founded was called Bucephalus, the city of Alexander's horse. And it was given money and treasure, and I'm sure it had a hippodrome, which is a horse racetrack. So, Alexander is Lord of West and East, and what he wants to do is he wants to blend the best of East and West. Blend the best of East and West. That rhymes. I'm a poet and I don't even know it. Blends the best of East and West. And this is going to be called Hellenism. He wants it done with the bloodlines of the leadership of the new kingdoms, the new unified Greco-Persian Empire, to have the children of Alexander and his Greeks and Macedonians and the children of the Persian aristocrats blending together. Alexander, by becoming legitimate great king of Persia, doesn't have to replace the Persian government. The Persian government swears allegiance to him. Because of Roxanne and because Darius made it possible for Alexander to take over legitimately. This is a brilliant fellow. Now, Hellenism is going to become a major deal, and we'll be talking about it again in a little bit and in future. But Alexander is a restless man, and he didn't get where he was by accepting any limit. For Alexander, there are no limits. Other people say, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, the world is just too big. You can't fight City Hall. To which Alexander says, baloney. I can do what I can do. I am Alexander. I am not shackled by your fears. I will do what I will do, and I will succeed because I will work hard and I will earn it. Alexander wants to bring the world together. I almost started singing, he's got the whole world in his hands, but I didn't, because you haven't been that bad yet. And hopefully you won't ever be bad enough to deserve having to listen to me sing a song as insipid and disgusting as he's got the whole world in his hands. I've never liked that song. Yes? I thought you had your hand up. Okay. I suppose there are worse songs. It's a Small World, after all, is a much worse song than He's Got the Whole World in His Hands.
I want to hear it.
Yeah, no, not going to do it yet. The spirit has come and gone. I'm just teasing you with the possibility, but other things may come, you poor, poor, poor devils. Alexander wants to bring the world under one rule and bring peace. So he takes his army southeast from Ctesiphon, across the southern Iranian plateau, into the Indus Valley. His troops are going to conquer India, which is the great civilization east and south of Persia. Now, to understand what's going to happen next, you need to understand what the Greeks know. The Greeks, educated Greeks anyway, know the world is round. They don't think it's flat. They know it's round. In fact, in a little while, a scientist named Eratosthenes is going to prove not only what shape it is, but he's going to guesstimate how big it is, and his guesstimate isn't going to be that far off. So the world is round. And what you've got on this round world, they also thought that it was like a beauty school head. It was sort of a round world that rested on something. We don't know what it is because it's something down there. And in this round world, you've got a variety of zones. You've got the frigid zone in the extreme north and the extreme south. And that's your Arctic and Antarctic region. And you've got the temperate zone. And the temperate zone is like baby bear's porridge. It's not too hot, and it's not too cold. And here's the temperate zone in the north and the temperate zone in the south. And this, by the way, is where Greece and Persia and the other countries are. And then you've got the torrid zone. And the torrid zone is the equatorial regions of the Earth that are too hot. Now, you can tell which zone you're in by the state of open water in the air. In the frigid zone, what form does water take?
Ice.
Solid.
Yeah, it is solid ice. In the temperate zone, what form does water take?
Right.
It's liquid. It's liquid water. Now, using that logic and understanding that the Greeks don't know how hot things are going to get, logically, what form will water take in the...
Steam.
Yes. It will become gaseous. It will evaporate. You will end up with a world so hot that liquid water becomes steam. Now, I'm going to show this after I'm done with the video. But there's a movie clip that shows what the Greeks are afraid of. Alexander marches his army into the Indus Valley. He beats an Indian army that has Indian elephants as a part of it. And it looks like he's going to go south of the Indus Valley into the Tar Desert. The Tar Desert is one of the worst places on earth. It is an anvil upon which the sun beats like a giant blacksmith's hammer. His troops are armored in metal armor. But he's Alexander, and he's our leader, and we love him, and we are following him out of the temperate zone into what is clearly and evidently the outskirts of the torrid zone. What they're afraid of is, if you've ever seen the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first Indiana Jones movie, they are literally afraid of the liquid water that is a component of human flesh melting and becoming steam, and their faces and bodies all melting off their skeletons. This is what they're afraid of. The Greeks are terrified that they are going to melt to death. And this unmans them. Up until this point, they could handle whatever. But in the Tar Desert, just as he's marching south, the generals come to him and they say, "Look, Your Majesty, we love you, and we would follow you almost anywhere, but you are literally asking these men to follow you into a hell where their skin, their flesh is going to melt off their bones. They can't do it."
Wouldn't they use the logic that where do you think the Indian people came from?
Well, they might be different people. They may be native to. They don't look like Greeks. They're darker skinned. The Indians that they meet are not Aryans in the north. They're beginning to encounter Dravidians, and Dravidians are dark-skinned Indians.
I know, but like when they think that they came from that area,
well,
like,
look,
it makes sense that they knew.
They know legends of Eskimos from the north. They're adapted to that life. They would assume that the Indians that they're going to fight are adapted. But that's an excellent point. We're not dealing with logic. We're dealing with the superstitions that are equivalent to the superstitions of Columbus's sailors, who thought that if they kept sailing west, the sea monsters were going to get them, or they'd fall off the edge of the world. This is not a rational fear. This is primal fear stuff. And soldiers are among the most superstitious people on earth. So are sailors. You know why? Because death is close. When you're a sailor on a ship, anything could happen. Thousands of things could go wrong that could end up killing you. So you are superstitious. Sailors have a legend called a Jonah. Does anyone know what a Jonah is on a ship? Okay.
A witch?
A Jonah.
Isn't it like the guy who got swallowed by the whale?
Yeah, it's based on the guy who got swallowed by the whale story in the Old Testament, but he's actually a jinx. A Jonah is somebody who is bad luck.
Yeah, okay.
And sailors have actually put men over the side and kicked them off the boat because they thought they were Jonahs. And the captain had to go along with it, not necessarily because the captains believed in Jonahs, but because the captains would face a mutiny if they didn't. Alexander's men were superstitiously terrified, bowel liquefyingly terrified of melting, and they didn't want him. And the generals had to tell Alexander, "You've got to, if you keep going, you're going to push your men beyond the breaking point, and they will turn on you." They don't want to do that. You don't want them to do that. Let's not do that. Please, 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 my lord, please turn around. And Alexander has to, for the first and only time in his life, accept a limitation, that he won't be able to conquer India because his men are too afraid. Go ahead, Ari.
I was gonna say something about like pirates and superstition.
Go ahead.
They were like super superstitious. So like when they like were like if they
Wait,
were,
can you say that again?
they're
They're what?
They're super superstitious.
Okay, sorry, I just had to hear that again.
So like if they were like they made like an egg or something, they would like have to smash the egg into like tiny parts, or else they'd like think they would something like bad happen to them.
Witches.
Yeah.
What the legend I heard is that if you leave a half an egg, a little tiny witch will inhabit it and use it as a boat to come after you.
Yeah, and like you weren't allowed to have if like a sailor brought like a woman on board, they would throw him and her off board because they thought she was going to bring bad luck.
Yeah, no women on ships was a big deal for a lot of maritime cultures for a while. And it wasn't because the sailors didn't like women. It's because women don't belong on ships. You're inviting the wrath of the gods.
Yeah, but there actually like the reason I know this is because I was watching a video. There's like this lady. She was like a lady pirate,
Mm-hmm.
and she.
Oh
was,
yeah.
She was one of like the most successful pirates in history.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she was an equal opportunity murderer, thief. Her men raped. I don't think she raped, but I'm sure her men did. Yeah. No, I know of this woman, and she was
I don't know.
impressive.
I think her name was Anne. I'm not talking about the Chinese sailor, but.
No, I'm talking about a female Caribbean pirate, somebody who worked in Blackbeard's territory.
Yeah.
And I don't remember her name, but I remember her.
Anne. Yeah.
Could be. But no, an interesting person. So Alexander turns back from India, and what he does is he settles down at Ctesiphon, the Persian capital. And at age 33, he dies. Now, the story that most historians believe is he died of natural causes. His body just had a flaw, and he died. I can't help but wonder if he wasn't helped along in dying by one of his generals who was greedy. I can't help but wonder if it wasn't a very well carried out assassination. But this is not what history says. In fact, history says he just died young of natural causes. It happens. May have had a heart defect, may have had something else. Boom, he's dead. And now his generals are looking down at his corpse, and they've got to decide what to do. And they decide, what we're going to do is we're going to divide the empire. By the way, Alexander dies at the same age that Jesus Christ dies, age 33. And there's something in the ancient world about a 33-year-old man. They are at the peak of their life, the ancients thought. They're old enough to be wise, because again, the average life expectancy was somewhere in the teens or 20s. That means half the people die before they reach 24. Okay? Being 33, you're wise enough, you've lived enough to be wise. But you're still young enough, unless you have massive health problems, to enjoy your body, to enjoy life. They don't have modern medicine. They don't have modern dentistry. In the mid-30s, late 30s, without all of that, your teeth begin to rot out and you begin to die of natural causes. Without modern medicine, our life expectancy is much shorter than it is now. And so Alexander dies at like the perfect age. He lived fast, and he left a good-looking corpse, as the saying goes. His generals don't like each other very much. They competed for Alexander's affection. So what is established are what are called the Diadochi kingdoms. And the Diadochi kingdoms are the divided kingdoms of Alexander's empire. Antigonus takes over Greece. Seleucus takes over most of the Persian Empire in the east. Seleucus takes over most of the... And then, by the way, if I want you to know this for the exam, I'll give you a map or something. I suppose, actually, in your notes, there is a map.
One, yeah.
So if you go to the map, let's see. Yeah. So on the 323 BC map, that's on the opposite to the Pericles funeral oration, you can see the Diadochi kingdoms. That's Alexander's empire, and then it's divided up on the 270 BC map. Remember, 270 BC is more recent than 323 BC because we're counting backwards in BC time. So Antigonus gets the kingdom of Macedon. And Seleucus gets the east. Ptolemy, with a P, gets Egypt. And this is basically how his empire is divided. Antigonid Seleucid, Ptolemaic kingdoms, the Diadochi kingdoms. So even Greece itself ends up being divided again. And they start their perennial, trouble with one another because they just can't get along. Got to keep them separated or something. Ultimately, politically, Alexander's empire is really a flash in the pan. And ultimately, Rome is going to march east and conquer the entire Greek world. When Rome marches east in between 280 BC and 30 BC, they find the Greeks easy to conquer because they are divided against one another. And in the end, the Greeks are happier being ruled by the Romans than they are being ruled by each other. It is also during the time of the Diadochi kingdoms of Seleucus in particular that the Maccabees rebellion occurs. Around 100 BC, Judas Maccabee and his brother lead an uprising that frees Israel from the rule of the Seleucid kingdom. So that is the story of Alexander's political legacy. It doesn't last. However, culturally, Alexander's legacy is a deep one. And the cultural legacy is Hellenism. Hellenism is not the belief in Helen. It has to do with the Greek name for Greece, which is Hellas. And there probably is a connection between Helen of Troy and the Hellenic poli that rise up after the Dorian Dark Age, and the fact that the Greeks still call their country the land of the Hellenes. So Hellas is Greece. Hellenism is the Reese's peanut butter cup of cultures. What is a Reese's peanut butter cup?
Chocolate and peanut butter.
It's what?
Chocolate and peanut butter.
Chocolate and peanut butter. I remember when I first saw a Reese's peanut butter commercial. It was Saturday morning cartoons. And there's a little kid riding along on a bike chewing a chocolate bar. And there's another kid walking, spooning things out of a peanut butter jar. And the bike kid unconsciously runs into the walking kid. And there's a crash. And then, you got chocolate in my peanut butter. This broken candy bar. And the other guy says, you got peanut butter on my chocolate. And they both try it. Hey, this is great. Reese's peanut butter cups. Eat them.
That's my dad was like constantly. He's like, you know what, Reese's peanut butter. When I was a kid, I saw a commercial, and then he would recite that. He recites that.
See, I'm not lying. There's independent confirmation. He's not either. I don't know why that stuck. It's a very effective ad. Hellenism is a Reese's peanut butter cup of culture. It is an alloy, like tin and copper make bronze, because like Alexander would have had his children be, like the children of his generals with Persian wives, it is the blending of the best of East and West, the blending of the best of East and West, the blending of the best of East and West. That is Hellenism. Christianity is an example of a Hellenistic faith. And now, this is just culturally, I'll explain how. Judaism was an Asiatic religion, West Asia, but still Asian. The Jewish faith in the Old Testament is very different in some ways from our culture, even though it is an ancestor of our culture. What happens is the Jewish idea of the Messiah is comparable to a Greek notion of the Christ. The Greeks were in a spiritual moment of doubt. We're going to talk a lot more about this later. The Olympian gods didn't satisfy them anymore. They didn't believe in Zeus and Hera anymore. Not seriously. This is for children. So the Greeks were hungry for a religion that meant something, that explained things. And when the majority of Jewish people rejected Jesus of Nazareth as the Messiah, because he didn't fit what they were expecting, St. Paul comes up with the idea of spreading the faith, evangelizing to the Greeks, which works. The Greeks are hungry for it. And Christianity spreads like wildfire through the Greek and Roman world. But Paul had to make a decision very early on. He had to decide whether or not Greeks had to become Jews before they would become Christians, whether Greek men needed to get circumcised, whether you needed to be kosher in your dietary habits, whether you needed to follow the Mishnah, all of the laws of the Jewish tradition. And Paul, after praying on it, says, no, a Greek can be culturally Greek and religiously Christian. And from that moment, it takes off like wildfire. So Christianity is a blending of Asian Judaism and European Hellenism, or Greek. It is a blending of some of the better ideas of Judaism and of the Greek world. One of the evidences for this is that the New Testament is not written in Hebrew, it's written in Greek. It's not written in Aramaic, the language of Jesus, it's written in Greek. So Hellenism, the blending of the best of East and West, does have a relation to the Christian faith, which is a blending of a great Asian religion and a great European culture, and it produces something new and better. It is the enduring cultural pattern in the East, this blending of East and West, that lasts from Alexander 323 or so BC, 300 BC or so, all the way to the time of the Prophet Muhammad in the mid 600s AD. So we're talking of close to 1,000 years. Hellenism, close to, just under. Hellenism is the major culture. You've got in this period art that is a mixture of Greek realism and Persian stylism. You've got Egyptian culture blending with Greek culture in Egypt. What caused the Maccabean revolt was that the Greeks were trying to blend Judaism and Greek culture in society, and the Jews wouldn't have it. And this becomes the norm all over the East. Tomorrow, there will be a lesson. So sign in and do that. And I would expect there to be a unit exam next Wednesday and Thursday. And that unit exam will cover everything involving ancient Greece. So I intend to wrap up lessons tomorrow and Monday and Tuesday of next week. Be ready for an exam on Wednesday or on Thursday, whichever day you're here. You're going to be here Thursday, I guess. And study your notes, study homework, study things like that. Thank you. You may talk quietly, and you are not here for lunch today, so you can fly, be free. Bye.